Lyme's disease or believe you may have it and you want to learn how to treat it naturally? Hello, my successful and healthy earthlings. Mihaela Raguz here, naturopath and founder of the Natural Health Podcast. In this episode, you will learn what I would do if I was exposed to Lyme's disease as a naturopath. Welcome to the Natural Health Podcast. We bring awareness to sustainable health in the business hustle space. Natural Health Podcast is perfect for the high-performing, business-minded individuals who want to work with their biochemistry to achieve success and optimal health. It's Wednesday, which means it's time for What Would I Do? In today's episode of Natural Health Podcast, we discuss this week's questions. All questions are kept confidential and I answer them as if it was me. The information provided is not to be taken as advice and is solely for information purposes only. I am not here to cure, treat, or provide medical advice. I'm here to educate and inform you so you're able to take steps towards optimal health. Please discuss any medical issues or healthcare changes or lifestyle changes, any supplement with your healthcare professional. Let's get into today's question. Okay, so today's question says, I was diagnosed with Lyme's disease June 2020 after numerous symptoms, including fatigue, a rash, numbness, weight gain, and the list goes on. What is a natural treatment for Lyme's disease? Well, first of all, I can't discuss treatments. As naturopaths, we don't treat. However, I can discuss what would I do if I was exposed to Lyme disease, and this will be basis on, as a naturopath, what would I do? But I thought we'll go first into, let's look at Lyme's disease, right? And Lyme's disease in Australia is a bit of a battle. It's kind of like a battle topic, right? It exists, it doesn't exist, it's fake, it's not fake. Depends who you go to. They don't have their personal opinions on it and so forth. Well, I'm not even going to go into that, right? Because this is real what you're feeling. The symptoms that you are feeling, the fatigue, the rash, the weight gain, all of this is real. If that is called Lyme's disease or if that is called blah blah disease or whatever it's called, it doesn't matter because it exists, right? So I wanted to put it out there. You're not making all of this stuff up in your head. It's true and it exists, right? So Lyme's disease is actually an infectious illness caused by the bacteria called Borrelia, which creates a condition more known as borreliosis or Lyme borreliosis, right? That's kind of like the sciencey stuff and all that stuff, right? So this is actually transmitted when you are bitten by usually a tick, right? It could, they're saying it could kind of be anything, but it's usually by a tick, right? Lyme disease can impact many bodily systems and organs and can in some cases cause or even mimic illnesses such as lupus, right? People usually with Lyme disease are frequently also diagnosed with other co-infections. So you'll have Lyme disease with other co-infections, and this is also caused by vector-borne bacteria and parasites, and a lot of people have these, co-infections, and I'll let you know why they have the co-infections if you were ever wondering, but bear with me, we'll get into that. So the first symptoms usually categorized by a pink or red rash that starts as a small spot and gradually spreads into a larger circle, and it kind of like people talk about a bullseye. That's kind of like what they look about, and if you Google a tick bite or something like that, it'll come up like a bullseye, but it doesn't mean you need to have the bullseye to have Lyme's disease. These are just some of the things that occur, right? And it happens between 3 to 32 days after bitten, okay? Joint pain, rash, headaches, fever, tiredness, the list goes on. This is kind of what happens, right? And Lyme's disease can be acute as soon as it happens, and it can be chronic, the late stages of the disease, right? So essentially, the interesting thing is the first Australian acquired case of Lyme disease was reported in New South Wales in 1982. So this is actually reported, right? So they can't say Lyme disease doesn't exist. That's all I've got to say. Anyway, so there are co-infections with individuals who have Lyme disease. Why? Many absolutely reasons why, okay? One of the main reasons is a biofilm. I could go on ages. We've only got 10 minutes here, so I'm going to try and squeeze in as much as possible. But I might actually do a podcast on Lyme disease, which is going to be about half an hour and a lot more detail. So bear with me. So I'm just going to give you what I would do in this instance, okay? So, but the biofilm are a community of microbes enveloped in a protective extracellular matrix, right? And these are antibiotic resistant bacteria in these biofilms. So essentially, if you chuck antibiotics at it, it's just going to bam, go away. It's not working, right? So the interesting thing is that it's estimated that 60% of all human infections and 80% of refractory infections, right, the ones that don't respond to medical treatment, are caused due to biofilms, right? So what happens is it's kind of like, let me explain this. So it doesn't only provide a physical barrier for antimicrobial agents, right? It also hosts antibodies and facilitates the exchange of antibiotic resistant genetic material between organisms, right? So they might be in there and they're exchanging all this information, which is so sciencey and it's so in detail that I can go into another podcast. But what you need to understand is, let's get into the facts. What you need to understand is that 400 to 1,000 times these communities may be resistant to antibiotics. That is a lot of resistance right there. And they can literally have as many as 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 different types of bacteria within a biofilm. It's kind of like, imagine like a castle, right? You're a castle and you bring all your mates in. These are all the bacteria, and you can have up to 50, 60 in there. And you guys are protected from anything. Like no one can come in there. Like you're protected. They might chuck a rock at you and you're protected. The antibacterials, you're totally protected. This is crazy. And why am I mentioning this? I'm mentioning this because the treatment, or the thing that I would do in a sense, shouldn't call it a treatment, helps remove this biofilm, and that is the key for any of this, right? Okay. So what you also need to understand is that pathogen bacteria that are known usually, and these are the co-infections that you may get, may be the Lyme bacteria, Escherichia coli, which is linked to colon cancer, bladder, Bacillus fragilis, which is linked to colon cancer, Candida, which is linked to yeast and fungal infections, also Chlorotidium, which is most common with GTI infections, Halobacteria pylori, which is ulcers, gastric, and stomach. So it's kind of like, do you have any of them? Well, yeah, you may have a biofilm, right? Okay. Questions. The first question that I would ask is tested, all right? So at this time, right, have you been tested? So Australia's testing facilities are not adequate or equipped to test for the Borrelia species that can cause Lyme disease, right? They suggest that the most reliable testing is currently conducted through iGeneX Lab in the United States of America and Infectolab in Germany, right? There may be other places too, right? But essentially, it's kind of like, have you been tested? Have you not? Is it acute? Is it chronic? Do you have any other symptoms? Any other co-infections, right? What was your health like before the bite? Or what was your health like before you felt any of this, right? What's your diet like? What's your lifestyle like? Are you self-treating, or do you have a practitioner working with you? Do you have IBS, SIBO, as Lyme disease is an underlying cause of IBS? So you might have IBS, but you might actually have Lyme disease, right? What's your vagus nerve issue? Do you have vagus nerve issues? It may be a Lyme issue. There's so many questions, but I've only got 2 minutes. Let's get into what would I do, right? Okay. Number one thing is, please do not self-treat, okay? Why am I saying this? Because this is such a complex topic. It is such a complex thing to get through. I am not saying this so I get your business and you come to me. Look, I haven't treated anyone. I haven't worked with anyone with Lyme disease. So that's not the reason why I'm saying this. I know a lot about this Lyme disease, and I'm very adequate enough to help individuals with Lyme disease. But me saying do not self-treat doesn't mean I just want to make money off you. What I mean by that is I'm saying it is a very, very intense treatment plan where a practitioner needs to adjust things with you on a weekly, if not even sometimes on a daily basis, because the symptoms that may erupt, because when you're breaking these biofilms, you may not just be getting that bacteria that causes Lyme, you may be getting other infections and activating them. So you may feel like a total, excuse my language, but shit through the treatment protocol. Okay. What does it look like? Okay, it looks like two things. There's 2 stages: biofilm disruptors and antimicrobials, right? We want to disrupt that biofilm that I was talking about. And talking about this more, I need to do a big podcast episode on this, right? So we need to break that biofilm and break it up, and we need to disrupt it. And then we need to come in with natural antimicrobials to remove that bacteria or any other ones that are not needed, right? All of these need to be taken at a therapeutical level, which may be high levels at some instance, right? And this includes something like having NAC, lactoferrin, stevia, mushrooms, digestive enzymes, SB, natural antimicrobials like thyme, oregano, clove, grapefruit seed extract, cat's claw, astragalus, angiographas. I mean, I'm just naming all of these absolutely amazing biofilm disruptors and antimicrobials that are proven to assist with this bacteria that causes Lyme disease, okay? This is what the science is saying. This is a timely and expensive protocol, which you need to get right once and for all. You don't want to do this protocol a number of times because it's timely, it's taxing on you, and it's expensive, okay? So also the other thing that I would do, I would ensure that I'm breaking those biofilms, I would ensure I'm taking those microbiotas, but I also ensure that I'm avoiding iron supplements, right? A lot of you individuals who have Lyme disease may be iron deficient. I would avoid iron supplements because this feeds the bugs, and it's kind of like a double-edged sword. On one side, iron may increase the growth rate of pathogenic bacteria. On the other side, low iron levels may contribute to bacteria and biofilm formations, and this is kind of like cause a protective barrier. So it's kind of like, this is why I need to work with a professional that understands this, because it's a double-edged sword, iron, right? But it's kind of like, do I avoid it? Do I not, right? I would also use rose geranium oil as a tick repellent all the time if you're out in the bush and so forth. Please, this has been proven to assist against tick bites, right? And then look, diet, you need a diet that specific restrictions or additions are more likely be implemented. This is on a case-to-case basis, right? But essentially, lots of veggies, lots of water, you'll be detoxing and things like that. Some people may include sauna and so forth, right? But the number one thing that I would do is I would find a practitioner, and one that I trust, one that understands me, one that understands what I'm going through, and then is able to offer me a plan, and not just say, oh yes, I can help you, and then pull things here and there. I want to see a plan. I want to see, how are you disrupting the biofilm, right? How are you using antimicrobials, and what antimicrobials are using for how long? But then also, how are you restoring? And this is the third one that I forgot to include in there. How are you restoring my body afterwards? What are you doing afterwards? So I want to see those 3 stages all lined out before I even start this protocol, because it's going to be timely and expensive, and I'm going to be going through it. And I mean, I know you individuals who have Lyme or going through it, poor man, like the symptoms and the exhaustion that you're going through, I get it, I understand. It must be absolutely crazy to go through it every single day. And I mean, the last thing that you want to do is pretend like you're doing a protocol and it's not helping you, right? You want to do a protocol and you want to make sure that you're getting results from it. That's kind of in the 10 minutes that I have, and I know I went over because you guys that have Lyme disease, I mean, you deserve to know this information. And I promise I'm going to do a podcast, a longer one, that goes into the Lyme disease and the bacteria that's linked to it, that causes it, okay? So bear with me, it will be coming out in a few weeks, months or so, right? Well, I hope that this actually sheds some light to your question and anyone who may have this issue. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me at mahala.raguse on Instagram, and I'm going to be in touch with you and hopefully be able to answer your question on the Natural Health Podcast. And remember, the missing link between failure and success is your health.